Still waking. Thank you very much for coming over the lunchtime. It's really very nice of you to spend your time coming to listen to us. I'm Caroline Freeman. I'm Head of Learning Design at Brightwave, and this is my colleague Sophie Costin, who's a learning designer with us. And we're going to try and answer this question today. So we're in the knowledge business. As a learning and development sector, it's our job to make sure that the right knowledge flows to the right people to make sure they can do their jobs better. And we want to talk to you today about how you can make the knowledge within your organisation work harder for you, and so that you can transfer that knowledge more smoothly within the workforce, and also create more engaging learning content from that knowledge, from that organisational knowledge. We're going to look at how the marketing industry has embraced customer-facing learning and what that can teach us about the kind of learning we're giving to internal audiences. We're going to be asking the question that given the success of content marketing, are you realising the true value of the learning within your organisation? Does it have added value to your brand in a wider sense? And so we're going to try and talk about how you can best harness the value of that knowledge and transform it as a positive brand experience for both your internal audiences and your external ones. So to start with, Sophie's going to talk about how you unlock the knowledge within your organisation, which may be stored, if you think of it as a kind of potential energy, and how you let it flow within your organisation. So, Sophie.
Hi. Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Yeah? No? How's the sound? Okay, I think that's better. Good afternoon. As Caroline just introduced, I'm going to start by talking to you about knowledge transfer. And by knowledge transfer, I mean the systems and processes that a business might use to allow content and learning to be accessed across the organisation in a timely and appropriate way. This is becoming an area of increasing focus as businesses grow in both size and geographical disbursement and digital disbursement as well. Knowledge starts to get trapped in various localized areas, and knowledge is a very valuable thing for a business, but when it gets trapped, it becomes much less useful. I was once at a photo shoot for a health and safety course, and we were in some industrial kitchens up in London, and I was there with the SMEs, and we were capturing images of this kitchen porter doing best practice health and safety things. But it soon became obvious that this kitchen porter was just as knowledgeable as the SMEs, and in fact he had this really hands-on, practical way of looking at things, and what this guy's name was Danny, didn't know about manual handling practice and safety practice. It just wasn't worth knowing. And some of what he told us actually made it into the final course, so it was really valuable for us, but for him as well. I think it's fair to say that he was quite frustrated that on a day-to-day basis he didn't have an outlet for his insight and expertise. And that's something that companies are becoming aware of, that as they expand, these incidental water cooler moments where knowledge would be transferred in a kind of incidental way, they're just not happening anymore. And so whereas that might have been looked at as a social experience once upon a time, we're now starting to think about that in terms of transferring knowledge content in a sort of incidental way. So why are we starting to look at this? What are the benefits? How can this help you? Well, there are a lot of benefits of knowledge transfer. Some of them are quite self-evident, some of them are a bit deeper. Here are some, I won't read them all out. I think you can broadly group them into two categories. So you've got the stuff for the business, which is all about efficiency and effectiveness and making you a more efficient business enterprise. And then there's also the things for the individual as well. So again, think about the kitchen porter Danny, who was just so frustrated at not being able to share his expertise and maybe get some of the expertise that he needed as well to help him do his job even better. And obviously that then feeds back into, if individuals can share their expertise, they feel more satisfied within their job. It's good for employee retention, and it's good for their effectiveness as well. So it's this really important field that we're just sort of starting to unpick and starting to play with, and what we can do with it. They liked it. So for the last sort of 15, 20 years, enterprises have really started to look at what they can do with this. In the early noughties, the company Siemens started to look at how they could become knowledge sharers under the mantra, if Siemens only knew what Siemens knows. They had a lot of knowledge that was just sort of dispersed around their business and not being used very effectively. So they started to look at how they could address that. And they had a lot of success with this drive. They were actually awarded the first MAKE Award in 2003, MAKE standing for Most Admired Knowledge Enterprise. And the fact that MAKE Awards even exists kind of is indicative of the fact that we're all starting to take knowledge transfer that bit more seriously and think about the potential that it could have. Since then, there's been a lot of other success stories. An often cited one is the World Bank. So they, like a lot of organisations, identified that they have a really strong knowledge base, but they were just overwhelmed by the sheer volume of it. It was spread across documents, it was locked in people's heads, and they just weren't using it in an effective way. So here's what they did. Well, they did a lot of things. They set up communities of practice, so they got the right people talking to the right people. They leveraged lessons learned, so they could take learning across markets. They created an expertise directory so that they could get the right information at the right time. And they set up an e-bulletin for managers and operational staff, again, just to get the right people having those conversations and reconnecting those water cooler moments. But on top of that, they also added it to their appraisal system for their staff. So they really baked in that knowledge transfer is important to their organisation and that people in the organisation would be assessed against this as part of their appraisal system. And to support it, they allocated 4% of their administrative budget, which is really quite significant, into supporting the things like the communities of practice and the other things that they did. But was it successful? Well, they reported improved operational effectiveness, a better quality of client services, enhanced relationships with clients, partners and stakeholders, and again, more satisfied employees. So this theme is sort of really coming out. But it's not just large multinational corporations that are starting to grapple with the idea of transferring knowledge. Brightwave looking at how we can help a range of companies with our Tesla platform. A recent success story is the work we did with Unison. So Unison, as I'm sure you all know, have a range of activists and staff spread across the country, and they wanted to unite them and get them talking and connecting. They came to us with quite a specific brief of what they wanted. They're sort of outlined here. Broadly, it was to build a learning community with the aim of increasing the quality of work that they did. And they wanted to empower all their staffs and activists, from beginners to experts, to be able to organise events to the same standard. So that's quite a tall order. This is what we presented to them. This is their organising space using our Tesla platform. So you can see it's got all these different tiles here relate to different pathways, and there's formal learning elements, there's ways of capturing experiential learning, but in terms of what we're talking about today, what's really interesting for us is this community tile where Unison staff and activists can go on. It works a little bit like Facebook, where you can post messages and that sort of thing. You can post documents, and they were using it to post templates as well to help them organise events, and then other people could comment on it and offer advice and support on what they were doing, which was really valuable to a lot of the members there. They also allocated certain active members to be their content curators, so they go on a weekly basis and add the best bits from the community to a pick of the week tile, so that learning didn't get lost, so it wasn't just there one week and gone the next. And we've had some really positive feedback from it so far. It's still early days. This is an example. On the first day, there were 700 users signed up to be part of this Tesla site, and it's now been rolled out to a potential 2,000 more users. So I think more is yet to come from this. It's a really interesting case study. So why aren't we all at it? If knowledge transfer is so great, what's stopping us? Well, there's obviously barriers to sharing knowledge. If it was as simple as popping what you know in an email and sending it round, there just wouldn't be a conversation to be had. It said that increasingly we're a nation of knowledge workers, so we're not working with products anymore, we're working with our expertise and our services. But a recent survey said that knowledge workers spent 38% of their time looking for the right information. That's quite a staggering amount. And this is a result of the barriers that are in place for knowledge transfer. I'll hand over to Caroline in a bit, but just before I do, I just want to explore what those barriers might be and ways that you can think about addressing them within your organisation too. So, knowledge transfer can kind of be broken down into three stages. So first of all, you need the right virtual platform. So you need this place for your virtual water cooler moments, for people to come and connect. But even once you have that, you need the right corporate culture in place as well. It's once you've enabled people to connect, you need to encourage them. It's the kind of build it and they still might not come phenomena, where once you've got a system in place, you still need to entice people and bake in that culture of sharing within your organisation. And once you've done both those things, which are kind of tricky enough, you still need to curate and manage your content so that when people are enabled and they do come, they can actually find what they're looking for. And if you have blockage at any one of those stages, you fall prey to what some people refer to as internal stickiness, which nobody wants, and your knowledge stops flowing in the way that it should. So what can you be doing? Well, there's several things. Firstly, so if you think about it in the stages again, so you need that space for people to be able to come and share. And then it's also about fostering that community. So like with the Tesla example, where you had the active participants who would curate the site, think about who in your organisation is wanting to get out there, and you could facilitate that and enable them to fulfil that role. Now, companies that have managed to do this successfully have found that they've got rid of a lot of their frustration from their staff of having these expertise that are tapped or trapped away, or just not being able to find the right information at the right time. And they've also started to reap a lot of the benefits in terms of efficiency and effectiveness. Content is a valuable thing, and once you untap it within your organisation, you can start realising those benefits internally and externally. And that's where I'd like to hand back to Caroline to talk about how once you've got this content internally, you can start to look outside your business. Thank you.
Thank you. So are the lessons, if we looked at learning, customer-facing learning, are the lessons that we could take for the way that we deliver internal learning and knowledge strategies? I thought we'd start with a quote. Now, in this quote, Jutkowit is talking about marketing. But the same transformation that he's talking about here is also happening in learning. In a world where people can access information and entertainment 24/7 and have a huge choice about the way they interact with that media, a push model of advertising no longer works. There's been a lot of talk in the conference already about how the push model for learning no longer works. For advertising and marketing, you've no longer got a passive audience. You've got an audience that can switch channels, that will choose to watch whatever they want, whenever they want. And the marketing business has responded through an explosion of content marketing. So some of you will know what that is. Content marketing, it provides, instead of talking about your products, it provides customers with services or information or learning that's valuable to them. It's a pull model. So when they find that interesting content on your website or in your branch, they then come to trust your brand as something that will deliver them value. So I've just got some facts here about content marketing. You can see that in terms of the growth and the kind of reliance on it that marketeers are now placing. Content marketing is a type of brand storytelling. What it does is it says, we don't just sell products. We know who you are, and we care about you, and we care about our relationship with you. And so you may be saying to me right now, well, why are we talking about content marketing? The reason is that apart from this is a good way of treating your customers, even if they're internal, is also that a lot of the content being used is actually learning. So sometimes it's in the form of knowledge transfer, and sometimes it's something more structured. It's a course. So I wanted to, just as a quite nice story really, it's that content marketing is nothing new. It started with this magazine, The Furrow, which was produced by John Deere, who manufacture agricultural equipment. This is 1895, and they produced a nice little brochure that had some instructions, some advice about latest trends in agriculture. And it also contained information about their products. So this was hugely successful. It snowballed so that the circulation grew to 4 million in its peak in 1912. And it's still going today. This is the digital version of it. So this is a more contemporary example, and this is quite a nice one. Here you have the BBC. Don't know how many of you have seen I Wonder. Has everybody seen I Wonder? No. There's not a lot of people. They have not given this a lot of fanfare, but actually they've launched this. It's a site on which I wonder you can get small nuggets of edutainment, if you like, and they use the assets that they've produced for their programs, and they get added value from them, producing short little nuggets of information. It might be about best way of making pastry, might be a historical subject. And for those of you who are developing e-learning, there's some really nice kind of UI in there, simple navigation, very simple interactions. So here's another example, which is much closer to the sort of thing that Sophie was talking about in terms of knowledge transfer. The Amex Open Forum was set up 6 years ago. It's an advice sharing platform where entrepreneurs can share advice and worries. And it has a cross-pollination between the kind of physical world and the online world, because some of the bloggers that produce work there will then appear at trade shows. And American Express's role is as a facilitator, but it's also in terms of guaranteeing the authority of the content. And this site, which then, it's written by a variety of contributors, some are paid, some are volunteers. And it's a really excellent way of crowdsourcing information. And obviously, it then places Amex as a place where, as a brand that is trustworthy, that has valuable information. Here's another example. This one is it's a face-to-face example. So in the wake of the banking crisis, the financial sector needed to rebuild trust. The Barclays solution to that was to, starting in 2013, they trained some of the people in the branches to be able to give instruction on how better to access online banking. So you can book a session, you go in, anybody can book a session, go in and get advice on how to use your computer so that you can access online banking. You can see the multiple benefits this has to Barclays. And their kind of content learning, their consumer-facing learning is increasing all the time. They've now got a coding sandpit for under 18, so you can go in and learn how to code. So the content marketing and the consumer learning element of content marketing has been incredibly successful. The demand for online courses has increased massively in the last 2 years. And that for some companies, it's not just about producing that learning for free, if you like, as a marketing exercise. It's also now starting to produce an income stream. It represents a shift in the way we learn. We've seen this in lots of different ways, but there is just an increased demand for just-in-time mobility. And amidst that huge kind of overwhelming source of content, there's a need for voices of authority. So you trust the brand. If you want to find out how to tile your wall, you'll go to a brand that you trust. And another element is the way that we want to see what our peers are saying as well. So there's a voice of authority backed up by peer review. This is just a summary of some of the ways that kind of learning, consumer-based learning, is working with its audience. It's making it useful to the learner. They have freedom of navigation. You use social and user-generated content. You apply curation to it so that there's a trusted voice there. And then at the base of it, because it's online, a lot of it, and you're able to draw analytics from it, you'll be able to see what's working and what's not, and they adjust it all the time. So I wanted to give you a couple of examples of work in our work that Brightwave's done in this arena. So this is a very simple example of leveraging an internal training tool for Alair sales staff as a marketing asset. So for both distributors of the product and end users, this is a product which is a diagnostic tool for clinicians that can perform simple tests on blood and urine samples. And this is it's online. You can go and visit it or come to our stand and have a go. It's a 3D Unity-based demo, and you can interact with the product because the 3D here has been used for a deliberate design reason, in that it's a physical 3D product. You have to be able to insert things in different bits of the product. So having that virtual experience of using the product, being able to enter the sample in, see how you interact with the product, provides you with a safe environment if you're going to demo the product. It also provides you with a safe environment if you're going to use the product. So it's got very simple, strong visuals, and the learning helps to reinforce. It's not only a sales tool; it helps to reinforce the Alair brand, that it provides high-quality support for its customers, and the 3D doesn't do it any harm either. This is another example of consumer-facing learning. It was a project we did in partnership with Diabetes UK and Bupa to provide online learning for people who've been recently diagnosed with diabetes. And it's a really easily accessible education program to help them manage their condition more confidently. You can log on from a number of devices, obviously, and it's got the interface is designed because of the multiple different sorts of users. You can see it's very, very intuitive, very simple. So just to summarize what we've been talking about trying to make the knowledge within your organizations work harder for you. There's a number of strategies you can take. You need to be making sure that the knowledge that exists there already is flowing freely. And those things we talked about. We also need to learn from the successes of consumer-facing learning and treat your learners as customers. And remember that the content you produce is valuable. It's not just valuable for your internal, for a specific purpose necessarily. It may have value outside that. So it's good to try and think about how it might link in with other audiences, including external ones. And finally, I just wanted to end with this quote from one of our clients, Dave Bouglas, at Tesco Bank, because I think it captures the spirit of what we've been talking about. So the digital disruption is affecting all the industries and all sectors, including learning. It affects our expectations about how we learn and how we find information and who we share it with. And we need to understand, as people developing internal-facing, for the most part, learning content, we need to understand the way people are accessing learning in their everyday lives and use those methods to deliver the kind of learning that will have value to them and will have, so that they're experiencing the same sort of brand experience as our external customers. Thank you. And if anybody would like to see any of the examples we've shown, do come and see us on stand 60.